Um, oh, we're recording this. Thank you. So welcome to our little town hall meeting. We have a bunch of things to go over. We wanted to give you guys a heads up on everything that's going to change in the next fiscal year. Give you guys some updates because, par for the course in the past year or so, everything changes in immigration. So we wanted to keep you guys abreast of those changes and give you guys some time for questions and answers. Feel free to put your questions in the chat box as we go. We're also going to have some time at the end to ask questions. You can either unmute yourself or do the chat box. So when we get to that point, we'll let you know. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Dilo. She's got the first part here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The agenda that we're going to go over is, we'll go briefly over a lot of these things, some of which we sent out in an email already. Cost recovery fees, J1 updates, change to the visa request process. That's something that'll be a little bit more detailed with Brianna, and expansion of the services that OIS is going to offer. And then, like she said, I'll do some immigration announcements and we'll go over questions. So as we said, the cost recovery fees for OIS will not increase. Everything will remain the same as it was. We've got a link here for the schedule, but I know that most of you are very aware of what that has been, and that will continue. The new J1 funding minimums, as you know, we have to do this every year for our scholars. So the new funding is $28,000 per year for the scholars, and then an additional $54.48 per year for each J2 dependent. So that is what the scholar would need to show us in order to get the DS 2019 issued. That will begin on July 1st. So OIS is going to honor all of the J1 requests and extensions that have been submitted prior to July 1st with our current minimums. And as of July 1st with the next fiscal year, the new minimums will go into effect. So with the English language proficiency evidence, I know that there have been some changes in the last couple of years. A test result is still going to be the preferable and required in most cases way to go for the English language proficiency. That will be the case for anyone who has never been in the US before or who is not from a US speaking country. But in some cases, we are going to allow a PI interview and an attestation statement. We will give more details about exactly what that's going to look like, but I know that a lot of your PIs have been asking for a little bit of a change. And we agree that in those cases where it is clear that a person has either been in the US a lot in the past or have studied in an English speaking facility or something like that, that the English language test is a little bit of an overkill. So details will be coming out with that option for a PI interview and attestation statement under certain circumstances, and we'll have that out to you before July 1st. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Brianna for the next piece.
So probably the most substantial informational part of this presentation. Like, there's a lot going on, right? But as far as changes to the processes that you're familiar with and the things that the department has had to do for visas in the past, on July 1st, we're going to change a lot of that. What we're trying to do is make it more user-friendly, be able to collect our documents and our data, keep it all in one place, just to streamline things as much as we can. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of the changes. Some very minor ones have already taken effect, but some more are coming as of July 1st. So let me share my screen real quick here. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So anyone who's done an H-1B or a TN or anything similar, any kind of visa request like that, you're probably familiar with this screen in the My OIS system. And that will not change. These are still mostly the same e-forms that you've been filling up until this point. A couple of the immediate changes, you might have noticed that your H-1B requests are being automatically assigned to an immigration specialist. In the past, we've waited until we got all the documents and things together and then made contact with you before officially assigning it to an immigration specialist. But in the interest of efficiency, making sure nothing slips through the cracks, those kind of things, we're actually auto assigning those going forward. So just keep in touch with your immigration specialist if you need anything or if you need to hold off on the process, something like that. We get requests like that all the time. But just be aware that we will be automatically assigning those pretty much as soon as you submit it completely in our system. The other thing that you might see immediately is in this compliance certification e-form, there is now a place to upload your export control approval. In the past, we've worked with export control and they've emailed us the approvals. And again, in the interest of efficiency and keeping everything in one place, because we do need to have these on file as a matter of compliance. We're just asking you guys that once you get your export control approval, that email, please upload it here into the request. So those are the two things that you'll see immediately. Okay. Now, come July 1st, things are going to change. Everything or almost everything will be electronically submitted. That includes all the documents from the department. That includes documents from the employees or the candidates, the export control, any and all checks required for the H-1B. That doesn't include dependents and H-4s, but for the H-1B, for the O-1, for the TN, for the actual employee's visa, all those checks will actually be processed and requested through OIS. So we will do that on your behalf. In a second here, I'll kind of explain what that's going to look like. But, I hope this comes as good news so people don't have to worry about, coordinating the checks, making sure the amounts are correct. We'll take care of that for you. And then something else we're going to do is we're going to offer education evaluation and translation services upon request. So I'll show you how to do that also. But let me show you. Excuse that I have to use like the back end of my system here to show you how this is going to work. But the key things that will change will be, okay. So your information about the university position, that e-form, it's going to look a little bit different. Now, these are not active in our system, so I can't show you exactly what they're going to look like, but this is the preview. So should look pretty much the same as this. Now, for the most part, the information is the same. We're still going to ask you for start date, the minimum requirements, what kind of position, all of that. But right here, you'll have the option to put your job description, the offer or appointment letter, and the support letter for the adjudicating officer, all right here. You can upload them all right there for us. No need to email, no need to mail. None of that will be necessary going forward. It'll be in the system. We'll be able to access it and print it out when we need it. So that's the biggest thing about this. We've also eliminated some questions on wage determination because it was more confusing than it needed to be. So it might look a little bit more streamlined, but overall the information is the same with some upload functionality. So that's one change. Something else for the department side going forward, and I think this is kind of nifty actually, the departmental contact e-form. This is where you guys put in your contact information, your billing account numbers, things like that. We're still going to need your name in case we have questions or concerns, if we need to get a hold of somebody. But down here, we're going to help you calculate the cost of your visa. So, we have an $800 recovery fee. That's for the preparation and filing of the visa. So that's for any type of visa category, really. If you need an academic evaluation, you'll have the option to add that here. And you can kind of add it up. Then we'll need your internal billing account number just for the recovery fee and the academic evaluation, right? So we'll bill you that internally, just like we've been doing. No changes really there. And down below, we break out the filing fees and how to determine how much this petition is going to cost. These are the actual checks that you guys have been requesting that we submit to the Department of Homeland Security. So we just need you guys to fill this out to the best of your ability. All visas require a $460 filing fee. That's for everybody, no matter what the situation might be. We're going to ask, is this the person's first H-1B request with PIT? So if they're an extension or if we're just amending something, changing something, the answer is no. But if it's a change of status, a completely new employee, somebody who's working abroad right now, anything like that, yes, this would be their first H-1B with PIT. That'll add the $500 anti-fraud fee to your cost. And then do you want premium? Yes or no? All right. As you're going through these things in the future, if you have questions about like, do I select yes or no? Do I need premium? Like that's what your immigration specialist is for. We're here to kind of help you figure that out. But overall, you'll be kind of selecting these yourself to give you a good idea of what your total cost would be. It also gives us a good idea and positive confirmation whether you want premium processing or not. So this is a way for us to keep our numbers straight too. You'll see from the drop down, there's a couple options to help you add it up. So if this is a first request with premium processing, we're doing the education evaluation and the cost recovery fee, everything will be totaled in your confirmation email that you get once we actually file. I don't have an example of the email here. You can't really see it in development mode, but you'll see it coming soon in July. But we also request, again, an internal billing account number just for the filing fee checks. Those two account numbers can be the same if you want us to pull from the same account or separately if you want it separate. So whichever you guys prefer, but you'll have to put that information for us so we can bill you internally appropriately. And again, you'll have the same check boxes and those sort of things that you've always been filling. So that's the departmental contact e-form. That's probably the biggest change for the department's end. But just to give you guys a heads up, the actual employee documents and things like that, their e-forms that they're filling out will look different also. So the applicant information e-form, we don't normally fill it out like you guys, we don't. This is actually sent to the employee or the candidate for them to fill out because it's mostly their biographical, their immigration information. So when they get it, this is what their form will look like. Same questions that we've always asked before: your name, your birthday, your city of birth, all that fun stuff. And then toward the bottom, we ask for a couple of things. Like, has the applicant ever been in J1 or J2 status? If yes, were you subject to 212E? Do you have a waiver? If you have a waiver document, please upload it here. There's some logic built into this. So depending on what options they select, it will ask them for required documentation specific to their situation. So this might look a little bit different depending on the person and their, situation. Same with if they're in a permanent residency process. There's spots there for them to upload that evidence. Are they currently in the United States? If yes, give us this information. We need your I-94 record. We need your visa stamp, your current status documents. All of those things can be uploaded directly into our system. That is really the biggest change, is this upload functionality. Because back when we were on campus, everyone printed and hard copy and sent it to us and did all that. And now everyone is doing electronic, or in some cases, we're still getting mail. But just to cut down on all that paper shuffling and all that coordination, hopefully this will help streamline your process as well as ours. It'll just all be kept in there. But yeah, it asks for all the required documents that we would normally ask for. If they have questions about it, they can always contact us or you if that's how you prefer to do it. But that's what the applicant, the employee's kind of form will look like. And then last but not least, there's a couple of changes to the dependent e-form. This is only for people who have family who are in the US at the time of the filing. Anyone who's outside the United States, we don't actually file paperwork on their behalf. They just need to go to a consulate, get a stamp, and enter. So we don't really need their information up front unless they're a new employee transferring in and their family is already here. If that's the case, we, as a courtesy, can file an H-4 with the H-1B application on their behalf. Most of this is handled by the family, but again, this is a way for us to collect those documents and have it all on hand. So in here, again, the upload functionality is really the biggest difference. So we'll ask for their passport, their stamp, their current status documents, all that fun stuff, the I-539 form, all of that stuff. And if they have any other family members to add, they can do it here in this e-form. So we can actually file for the whole family at one time. But that's kind of what that looks like. And so those are the biggest things: the check requests, the educational evaluations, and the upload functionality. So again, this will not be active until July 1st. Don't panic, don't stress about it. We have plenty of time to discuss this and go over things. And if you do have questions in the meantime, just let us know.
Brianna, we've got 2 questions for you.
Sure.
The first is from Barb, who says, how do I get a packet to OIS? I have everything in a box folder. Can I just add someone to that box folder?
Yeah, for the time being, if you have a box folder, you can add me, preferably me and Cynthia, who's another immigration specialist on my team. So if you add us both, it's either going to go to her or I. So if we both have access, we can get what we need.
And I'm assuming, Brianna, that that is just for now. After July 1st, you would want to use this new system where they would take things from Box or wherever they have it and put it into the Synapsys system directly.
Correct. Just for now. As of July 1st, you don't have to worry about collecting your people's documents. You don't have to worry about making a box or doing any of that. It'll go right into our system.
Okay, next question from Deb is, are these changes only applicable to H-1B visas or to J-1s and as well? And I'll add anything else.
For the J-1 visa, we require very little documentation. What we do require is already required to be uploaded into the J-1 request. And we also bill internally for that. So no fee checks are required or anything fancy for that. Because of that, the J-1 request will actually look pretty much identical, just because we've already worked on that process in the past.
Okay. Thanks, Brianna. Any other questions about that? And we'll have time for questions afterwards too. Okay. We're going to go on now and talk about some of the and I say immigration announcements. Some of them are immigration, some of them are Department of State, but we'll look at a couple of those announcements. As I'm sure you are all aware, the H-1B and J-1 visa bans that had been in place were lifted as of March 31st. So now if you have anyone who is trying to obtain their first H-1B visa or a J-1 visa, the bans on those visa types were lifted. However, remember that even though those bans were lifted, we still have 2 major problems. One is that not all embassies have reopened yet. In fact, a lot haven't. And so your visa processes are still going to be delayed, depending on where the person is at. As geographic specific conditions improve, those embassies will begin to open. We just have no good idea of when that might be. And then we also have the travel bans to anyone who have been in various countries within the last 14 days. And you see those countries listed there. It's China, Iran, the Schengen region, UK, Ireland, Brazil, and South Africa. Those have been in place for a number of months now, and they remain in effect. We'll talk in a little bit about another announcement that just came out yesterday or the day before. But right now, those travel bans are still in effect and embassies are not opened. So even though the visas are theoretically available, you're still going to have people having problems. So Department of State announcements. These all have to do with this 14-day ban. Part of that ban included a possibility for a national interest exception to be granted to some travelers. Under that ban, you had to prove that there was a national interest in you coming here. And as I'm sure some of you have figured out, that national interest exception was not easy to obtain for many people. On April the 8th, the government granted kind of a blanket national interest exception to some categories of travelers, but none of them really affected anyone that's common to the PIT community. So we probably didn't even tell you about it, just now saying it, because it really didn't affect our folks at all. And then there's one in here on April the 19th, and I put it in not because it affects us in any way, but because it's causing some confusion. On April 19th, the State Department announced that it was revising the way that it assessed travel safety, and it was doing it to align with CDC guidelines. The effect of that is that there was a significant increase in the number of countries around the world that are now determined to be at a level 4 do not travel advisory under the State Department. Note that this only affects outgoing travel. So it only means that the Department of State is issuing these warnings to people within the US who might be traveling to those countries. So it doesn't really affect the people that you're trying to bring in from those countries or from any other country. But like I said, it was causing some confusion, so I wanted to put it here and say that. And then the more important one for us, on April the 26th, there was another national interest exception that was granted to all F1 students coming from those restricted regions, same countries I mentioned before. And it is for students, it's a little bit unclear, but it is for students who are trying to arrive into the US for an educational program that begins after August the 1st. And I made a mistake and said August the 2nd, but it's August the 1st, 2021. So for any student from those regions who are trying to come in after August the 1st or trying to come in for a program that starts after August the 1st, they are going to be permitted to arrive with a valid visa. If they already have a visa in their passport, they can come in without any troubles. If they need a visa, then they will be granted that national interest exception at the time they get their visas. Remember again that this does not affect or doesn't address the fact that embassies are still closed around the world. So they're still going to have to get that visa appointment, and they're still going to have to be granted a visa if they don't already have one. Another thing that this April the 26th notice makes mention of is other academics in exchange programs. So we are reading that to mean that if you have J research scholars, professors, other academics in the J program from those regions, then what they should do is when they apply for their visa at an embassy, they should request a national interest exception, and it might be granted to them. It is not a blanket exception like the F1. It's not kind of as easy as the F1, and they haven't given a whole lot of advice as to what to say or how to do it, but it leaves open the possibility that exists, and it'll be easier for J1s as well. Okay. All right, now we come to the question part of this, and we're happy to answer whatever you do have. Some of them came in by email, and so we'll talk about those. One person asked about a student worker who has applied for an employment authorization document. It has not come yet, and they're asking about whether or not that student worker can continue working after the semester ends, but before they receive the EAD. And the answer is no, 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 no. They cannot do that. They have to stop working as of, I think, May 1st is the end date on the I-20. And they may not begin working again until that EAD comes in. They have the card in hand, and we need to make sure that the start date on that card has already arrived. So in other words, if they requested employment authorization document to begin May 15th, their card arrives, they can't work between May 1st and May 15th because their start date on their card is not before that. So they have to have both the card in hand and the start date has to be prior to when they start working. This was not a question that someone asked, but we did want to let you know that we send out what we call Top 5 Tuesday emails to all of our international students. And in the past, some departmental folks have asked if they could be added to that, just so that you can see what is being said to students. We make announcements of various things, various immigration rules and regulations that come out, and various other things. So it's 5 things every Tuesday. If you want to be added to that to see what students are being told, you can email Katie Von Lehman. Maybe one of you can put her email address in that chat, Brianna or Sarah, and be added to that listserv. We have also been asked questions about vaccines and whether or not students should get them in their home country, or if they're available, or if they are going to be required to get them here. And the answer is that the university is strongly urging everyone to get a vaccine as soon as they are able to get it. The university is not requiring that students have a vaccine before they come to Pittsburgh, but the message is get a vaccine as soon as you can get it. And I have heard no concerns about whether or not it's the type of vaccine that's given in one country versus another. Just the message is get a vaccine as soon as you can get it. And you are not required to have a vaccine because we know that it's not available to everyone as easily as it is to others. So you're not required to have a vaccine before coming. And of course, when you get here, vaccines seem to be now more readily available here, and they will be available to anyone who has not yet gotten them. Okay. Any other questions? And Sarah and Brianna, I know you've been monitoring the chat, so feel free to speak up.
So I got some questions about current turnaround time for J1 scholars. I will say that it's generally a very busy time, end of the semester, and then beginning of the fall. People are already planning for that. So our processing time used to be a couple business days. I would say it's still roughly the same. Probably the biggest barrier is mailing, to be honest, because international mailing, things are a little bit off, a little bit slower than normal. But as far as actually receiving and processing the J1, I would still say within a week. So that's for J1s. We had some questions about volunteering if people don't have an EAD. And as Sarah said in the chat, we really don't recommend people volunteering unless they have an EAD card. I don't know if Dila, you want to speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, from an immigration and a Department of Labor point of view, if they are volunteering in a position that they have held as a student worker, they're not only violating immigration status because they are in fact working, but they're also violating labor laws because they're working and we're not paying them. So now we've got 2 violations rather than just 1. The only time that volunteering is acceptable, and this is for any student, if they're trying to, students can't work off campus, for instance, when they're on a student visa. And we get asked if we can go volunteer. The answer to that is you can volunteer in a place that regularly hosts volunteers. So you can go to, I don't know, a museum if they have volunteers that do tours, for instance. If it's a place that has volunteers, you can volunteer. But if you're asking about whether or not a student can continue doing their student employment as a volunteer until their EAD comes in? The answer is no.
And then in sort of related for OPT, the question is, we're getting a lot of graduate students not letting me know that they applied for OPT so that I know to take them off payroll until they receive their EAD. How can we get information if they applied?
I mean, the student should be able to tell you, and the reality is that you shouldn't have anyone continuing to work for you. If they're graduating, they should not be working for you after May 1st unless they have shown the I-9 office documentation that they can continue working. So they would have to be able to produce that EAD, and they should be taken off of payroll if they have not done that. Sarah, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I do want to make sure we remind the students about this, because sometimes when we do OPT, we have shortened their I-20 and you all wouldn't know that. And
yeah.
And so while we're not telling you about it, we are telling the students that they have to make you aware of that and then handle any issues with their I-9. So hopefully they're doing that. That's the issue, I think.
Elaine, you're asking if it's possible to provide the EAD information in a format. So you want an email that says what we just said? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, I actually would love to be able to provide this information to my PI, because I've stressed it before and they still go ahead and allow them to continue working. And then what happens is once they get the card, then I think I tried to explain this to Katie, or that our PIs or our students then are reinstated in the timesheets, and then they go back and put old timesheets in. The issue happens to be is then it's like, I'm expecting them not to have been working during that whole time. And then all of a sudden I get like all these timesheets. So they should have been removed from the payroll system by HR because their I-20s expire and should not be added back in until their EADs are produced. But it should not allow them to be able to put time in between that end of the I-9 and when the EAD is produced, not when it's effective, but when it's produced, because how could they start working when it's effective if they don't have the card in hand?
Right, you're right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I suspect that part of the problem is, as Sarah said, that some of them are going to have I-20s that were, we expected them to graduate next year and they got done early. And so they'll have I-20s that are into the future, which is why HR wouldn't catch them, because when they did their I-9, they were still eligible to work. So Sarah, I think you and I need to talk about this one a little bit more and figure out if there's anything else we should do, but we certainly can produce an email that lays out what the rules are. Yeah, that you can give to PIs.
Yeah, and someone also asked regarding, so since we email students regarding their end date on the I-20 and that they should apply for OPT, is there any way department admins could be copied on those emails so we can also remind them?
I'm going to say that one's going to be much harder. And I think, Deb, it wouldn't be as hard on the DS 2019, which is it's a J1, but they don't apply for OPT anyway. So I think you meant I-20.
I did.
Yeah, okay. I'm guessing here because I'm not the one that does this, but I'm going to guess that would be really difficult, but because we don't always know which department admin, we don't have that connected in the
Gotcha.
system. Sarah's kind of nodding, so I think I'm correct on that.
Yes, across the board, it would not be accurate. we wouldn't know who to put in there. But then there's also the idea of we always have to be really careful of who we're emailing about a student's immigration status. And so this is also on the line there of who is it appropriate to email about a specific student's issue, you know? But we can, I mean, I will always look at, I will look at the system and see if I'm wrong about being able to do it. And then we can decide if we want to do it or not.
Yeah.
The reason I brought it up is we had a student who actually is graduating. He was emailed in February and told to apply if he was going to stay another semester, and he forgot. And the next thing we know, it's too late.
And he was probably emailed 3 times because
I'm sure
we have a 90, 60, 30-day reminder system, I think, is probably what he got. So yeah, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but
I mean, I'll say to that one, at some point, students have to take responsibility for their own records as well. And there's only so much that we can do. But like Sarah said, we can look at whether or not the system would allow us to do this, and then whether or not it makes, you know, it makes legal and logical sense to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And I have another question. So I know you sort of touched on this, but do you have a sense of whether incoming students from certain regions or countries will or will not make it to campus by August?
I will say that I am more hopeful today than I was even a month ago. And we are not going to know until July how many students are going to be able to get here. The reason I can say that I'm more hopeful is because of this blanket national interest exception for our big country, China, but for other countries as well. And I also know that embassies around the world are opening up, depending on where they're from. Some are, you know, India is still going to be closed for a while, I think. So depending on where the students are from, I have more hope than I did a month ago. Do I think that 100% of our students are going to be able to arrive by the start of classes? No. 90%, maybe. It's really hard to say. Once embassies do open, what we also know is that there is going to be a huge line of people attempting to get those visa appointments, and how easily embassies can manage the influx is a question that I don't think any of us can answer until it happens. I can also say that embassies are making students a priority. So when they do go back in person, they are making student visas a priority, even over J's and H's. So there's some hope, and I just can't give you any kind of guarantees and don't know what's going to happen. Deb, you department admins should not have to give students information regarding the NIE. This just came out, and so we are developing a fact sheet that we will post and we will send out to students. If you enroll in that Top 5 Tuesday, you will get it when we send it to students, but we'll also try and make it available to you all.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, but if you guys do have anything that comes up at any point, just let us know. We'll be in touch, I'm sure with all of you very soon for various reasons, but before July 1st, whenever all these things start happening and changing, we'll give you some reminders, some heads up. We're also planning on sending out a copy of the slides to you guys after this presentation. And we do have a recording, so if you need that for any reason, just let us know. Sheila, is there any closing remarks?
I don't think so. Thanks everyone for joining us. Do let us know if you have other questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.